But we just talked about some things that we needed to do defensively. I felt like there were moments where it was shifting defensively, and you can't really trade twos for threes. I think once once they made a couple, it just seemed like it parted the Red Sea for them every time they touched the ball. But when you look at this and you see 72 points in the paint, 48 fast break points, those are a lot of really good things. But right now, the defensive side of the ball is something that we're going to focus on and continue to work at.
Questions for players?
How did their pressure really affect your game with their pressure?
I think at the beginning it was really good. We was breaking it, we was making extra pass, but towards the end I think a little fatigue kicked in. We was getting a couple turnovers, just kind of rushing towards the end, so that kind of got them going and activated.
Ice?
I think that pressure, it's kind of self-explanatory. I think when teams do have a lot of ball pressure, it makes it a little more difficult to get those passes you're normally getting. I think we did a pretty good job at adjusting to that after halftime, of course. But I think it's just a part of the game, and I think that we adjusted to it pretty well towards the end of the game.
So the Sun Devils had 19 fast break points in the first quarter. How did it help the Sun Devils offense keep in touch with the Arkansas State's challenging offense and defense throughout the game?
Well, I think, again, transition is our game, right? We would see how we get activated in transition. We can get up and down the floor. We can change ends. And so when we were able to get those stops, it created momentum for us. So it wasn't a matter of them speeding us up with their pressure. It was once we were able to get the stop, then we were able to turn that into offense.
Jalen, you were kind of able to open up your offense compared to the first game. What was kind of the difference in this game?
For me, I just do what my team need me to do. So if it's a score night for somebody else, then it's a score night for somebody else. I think that my abilities offensively and defensively kind of set me aside to a lot of great players. So just finding my rhythm, I got the ball early this game, and I felt like I was ready to go, looking for my teammates, making sure I'm making the right reads, right passes, and just staying engaged. So whether that be me rebounding, whether that be me running my lane for a fast break, just doing whatever I needed to do in that moment.
This can be for either of you. Just at the end there, some time came off the clock, I guess, and fouled with like 2 seconds left instead of like 5. What happened in that instance?
I think it was a help rotation. I think it's just us learning, like, hey, this is the hot hand. We have to make sure that we rotate, and whoever helps, we got to help the helper. But I definitely think the foul, I mean, it happens. It's a part of basketball. We had her back, and we're ready for whatever's next, which was us scoring, of course, on the other end.
And the goal was to go get it before 2 seconds went off, and it was just kind of the old-fashioned game of hot potato, right?
Any other questions for the players? Thanks, you. Appreciate it. Coach will stay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were talking about the three-pointers, and when you had the latter part of the fourth quarter, when you had the 4 guards out there,
Right.
It seemed like that kind of cleaned that up a little bit.
We did, and that's the versatility of our team, right? Obviously, we start big with Basham and Nevaeh, but we felt like that 4-guard lineup was going to help us defensively, even if we had to switch. We had to switch late, but it was just the closeouts, getting there, over-helping. I thought there were moments where, and we don't help off strong side, I thought we over-helped in instances and not arriving on the catch, but the game plan was to make sure we could match their guards, because even their undersized big was a guard. So we wanted to go small in that instance.
Coach, you ended the first half 10-0, or Arkansas 10-0. How much did that affect the game, in your opinion, going into halftime?
Well, I think it's a game of runs, right? I think for us, we're still talking about defense, and we're talking about those defensive rotations. We were able to show real time some of our closeouts. We were able to adjust the pressure. I felt like we were creeping up instead of spacing in that pressure. We didn't have relief behind it. But again, I thought coming out in the third, right? We came out, we made them call timeout, right? We made a little bit of a run, but I just thought we were trading baskets when we shouldn't have, and they were 2s for 3s. And so, again, momentum started to shift back their way. But I thought we did a great job finding Nevaeh inside. I mean, there was a lot of good things when you pull out of this, but we just have to clean up the defensive side of the ball. It's not the offensive side. I mean, we put up 96 points, but we got to take personal accountability and saying, okay, I'm not going to let you score on me, but also we got to help the helper. We got to be in the gaps and the spaces we need to be in. And on those ball screens, again, we weren't supposed to go under a shooter. You're supposed to body up and get over. And if we can't, then it's an emergency switch, and that big needs to have a high hand. So it's still a group that has never played together, and this is the second time this group has ever played together. This is the second time they've ever played with Ty. Ty hasn't played with one person on this team. So we're still working at it. I like the 96 points. I don't like the 100. So we can fix the defensive side of the ball for sure. But when you have a game with 25 assists and 17 turnovers, you have multiple players in double figures, right? We'll fix that defensive side of the ball for sure.
Coach, you've talked about when you're recruiting players, telling them that you can bring them home.
Yeah.
With moving to the Big 12 and being able to tap into different markets around the country and some larger ones than maybe the Pac-12, what does that do for the exposure for the program?
Well, I think we're in every household now, right? We're in every household. Everyone can see our games. We can go recruiting kind of Midwest, East Coast, and we have some of those recruiting connections there. So we can at least promise families that will bring their daughter home at least one time, but I think it just opens up the landscape for us versus a lot of players that we might have wanted to identify, but their parents wouldn't have been able to see them.
Obviously, the offensive performance was really good, but only took 13 threes. Would you like to take more threes?
I think we take whatever they give us, honestly. I thought we were getting up and down the floor in transition, and we knew that the competitive advantage was our inside, just from a height advantage. So we were really trying to get the ball inside, and I thought that worked. You know, if it's a 3 night, it's a 3 night, but I thought tonight was inside and 72 freaking paint points. I don't know if I've ever seen that, right? But so that's the good stuff, and in that locker room, you got to still tell them the good stuff. You got to tell them where we're growing. There are 30+ games left with a brand new team. You know, experience, yes, talent, yes, but we still got to be able to gel and make sure for us there's going to be a whole lot of defense these next couple of days.
You contribute the addition of Basham to helping you get the 72 point paints.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, she's 6'7", right? And we're still even learning how to identify her and when to throw the ball and you know, really get her involved. But she changes the game in so many ways. Her presence at the rim, very agile defensively. I mean, to be able to start with a smaller Arkansas State team and Basham out there defending and lateral movement, you don't see that a lot from someone her size. So that's something she's worked at, but I do attribute, you know, a lot of those points with her and Nevaeh inside.
How did you see her adjust? Last game she dealt with foul trouble. How did you see her adjust?
Well, we do a lot of film. I mean, as soon as the game's over, right, they get clips, and then we sit down and we talk one-on-one about things we need to get better at individually and as a team, and they're all students of the game, right? I'm sure they're trying to pull this game up right now so we can get better. And we talked about that in the locker room. The locker room was, one, this is not good enough and we will be better, but what we have to commit to. And what we have to commit to individually, but also as a team on the defensive end in practice.
From a macro perspective of just the growth of women's basketball as
Yeah.
a whole, how many instances would you say you just had like people come up to you, inquire about the game, and just its popularity around the culture?
Well, everyone's talking about women's basketball. I mean, now you turn on different broadcasts and they're talking about the game. Right here, having the Phoenix Mercury WNBA franchise, you look at the viewership numbers, you look at the people that are, I mean, ticket sales in arenas. So right now, it's a great time for women's sports. Totally, women's basketball, you see it happening in women's volleyball as well. So I think it's just the right time. I know, and we've all known that women's sports are really, really good, but the fact that you all are in here covering it, there are more eyeballs on the game. And once you see the different talent and the parity and talent in teams, that's where you have a better appreciation for the sport.
Everybody good?
I have one more question.
Yes.
Speaking of the schedule for next week, you
Mhm.
guys will have the Hall of Fame game at Brooklyn
Yes.
Center, followed by a back-to-back. How much of a challenge do you think the Sun Devils will have?
Well, I think right now it's recapping this game, right, before we move on to the next. There's some things we need to clean up defensively, and that's what we're going to focus on right now.
Jeff, you have one?
Yeah, so they only scored 52 against Western Michigan,
Mhm.
and I'm sure they were upset about that. But what, from your looking at that, whatever you saw of that game, what was the biggest difference? for
Well, I
them
think
to,
early,
like, double their.
yeah, I think early in that game, their pressure bothered Western a little bit. But I think in the second half, they handled that pressure. And they were able to, they made a whole lot of shots. And I will tell you, Arkansas State probably didn't shoot the ball this well, right? But they do take high volume threes. Like, we knew that they were going to take high volume shots. They went in today.